I will be making a purple plum tart from The Taste of Country Cooking by Edna Lewis, published in 1976. I've cooked from this book in a previous video making chicken with dumplings, so no long intro this time, but I keep coming back to this book because everything I've made so far really reminds me of the country cooking I would eat as a small child. The methods are often old school compared to modern recipes, but it definitely gives the final result a rustic, hearty flavor and character that just isn't replicated by newer cookbooks. There's nothing wrong with new recipes, but sometimes you just want an old school classic. So if that's you, this is definitely a book to pick up. And with that, we'll go ahead and hop into the kitchen. Here is the setup for our purple plum tart. This is going to be a little bit different than a French tart. This is definitely an Old South, Southern US recipe. You will need a heavy pan to put in the oven like this. You're also going to need a tart pan and a stand mixer would be quite helpful for mixing the dough. But just to go over the ingredients really quickly here, it's very simple in terms of ingredients. Purple plums, sugar, flour, butter, lemon zest, and we'll also use some salt later. But that's all there is to it. What I'm going to do now is actually just cut these plums in half while the oven is preheating to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're going to cut these plums in half and remove the pit, and we're just going to line this pan with them. And just put those skin side down in the pan, and then after I cut all of these, we're just going to sprinkle the sugar over the top, and we're going to put this in the oven for about 425 Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. And that's to get the juices out, which we'll use later, and also to sort of cook the plums and get a nice flavor out of them when we're ready to put them in the tart. So, all right, I'm going to finish cutting these plums and get this in the oven, and then I'll see you at the next step. While our plums are baking, we're going to go ahead and make the pastry dough for the tart as well. So you're just going to go ahead and put your cup of flour in and about a quarter cup of sugar. And go ahead and put your lemon zest in as well. Try to get as much as I can to get that good lemony flavor out of there. And we'll go ahead and add the salt. And the butter. Just go ahead and cut this up into little chunks to help everything blend together a little better. And like I said, this is actually going to make a fairly wet dough that's a little bit different than sort of what if you've made a lot of French style or European style tarts. The dough is probably going to be a little bit looser than those because of the way that we're doing it. There's actually no chilling involved here, which is very abnormal for tart dough. But that's why I did this video, because I wanted to show you something a little bit different than my tarte aux pêches, the peach French tart that I have in another video. Okay, we've got all of our butter in now. And one last thing to note here, we're actually going to let this blend in the stand mixer for about 15 minutes. So it's going to go for quite a while. And that's to loosen everything up and really get it incorporated and give everything time to actually blend and absorb into the flour. Takes time. I've mentioned this many times before. Flour takes time to absorb liquids and absorb other things. So letting it go with the dough hook for that long on medium, low speed will help the dough really come together. 2 notes for this recipe. Specifically, they say at about the halfway mark, add another tablespoon of flour. I will show you that. And then right before the very end, add 1 more tablespoon of flour. And then just do a quick mix and the dough will be ready. But I will show you both of those steps. I just wanted to let you know about that before we get started. So I'm going to let this go ahead and get working with the stand mixer, and I'll be back at the next step. This is what our dough looks like at the 7.5 minute mark. So I'm going to go ahead and put the first tablespoon of flour in. You can see it's coming together and it's starting to take on, it's crumbly still, but it's starting to take on a bit of a a Play-Doh or a clay type texture. And that's what we want. So, all right, I'm gonna let this go ahead and go for another 7 minutes or so, and I'll be back with you guys. All right, you can see how well it's come together. It's very malleable. It is a little sticky. I'll show you how we're gonna put it in the tart pan because it is looser and more, doesn't hold together as well as like a European style tart dough. So we are at the point now though where we're gonna put our last tablespoon of flour in. And then I'm just gonna give this one more quick whirl. You just let it go until this flour is incorporated. Once this flour is incorporated, we're ready to go, and I will see you at the point where we assemble the tart. I just took the plums out of the oven, and I just wanna show you guys how beautiful they came out and how they're looking now. They'll continue to leak juices here. We're gonna use that juice to make a plum glaze at the very end of this. So this is all looking fantastic and coming together really well. So, all right, I will see you at the step when we're finishing up the dough. Okay, because this dough has so much butter in it, you actually don't need to grease this pan. The dough has enough in it already that it won't require it. So rather than like try to smoosh this down or roll it out, it's too loose to roll it out. What I like to do with this kind of dough is actually just sort of do it. Your dough is naturally going to gravitate away from the edges. So I kind of just put it all around the edges first and then push down to get it to spread down to the bottom part of the pan. Like I said, because tart dough naturally sort of retreats away from the fluted edges of the pan. So I'm going to continue. You can see how easy this dough is to push down, and it's starting to come into the bottom of the pan just naturally anyway. So I'm not gonna make you watch me do this the whole way around and get the bottom in. So I will be back at the point at which I finished filling the tart pan. All right, I finished spreading out the dough into the tart pan, and now we're gonna do something super easy. We're just gonna put these still skin side down into the tart, and we'll eventually space them out so that they sort of have an even distribution here. Let's see here. Ooh, some of these are still quite hot. So, all right, I'm gonna finish putting these in, and then I will be back and I'll show you. We will put these in the oven. Actually, I'll just go ahead and tell you, these are gonna go in the oven at 350 for about 20 to 30 minutes. Just sort of monitor them, and if they look like they're getting to be about ready, you can take them out. When the crust is brown, really is where you're going, how you're judging this. Let's see. And we might actually have extra this go around, in which case we just get a wonderful little snack. Let's see, do we got enough room to put some more in? If we can pack them in, right? Okay. Can we get one in here? That one kind of fell apart. Let's get another one in here. And we'll get one last one in here. Okay. All right, we've got this done. So this is about to go into the oven for about 20 to 30 minutes at 350 Fahrenheit. We're gonna use this syrup that's over here to make a glaze that's gonna finish the tart once it's done. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these in, and then we'll get started on the glaze, and I will show you guys how to do that. And the last thing we're going to do before we sort of do the final assembly here is we're just going to use this juice to make a thick sort of syrupy glaze. And this is a super easy process. Literally just put all of this syrup into this pan. I heat I make syrups on essentially medium low on my stove, so the sugar will burn if you put it up too high. So don't go nuts with the heat on this. You want it to low and slow for syrup is okay, especially when you're dealing with melting sugar. At least in my experience, it is. If someone wants to leave something in the comments to correct me on that, I'm always welcome suggestions. I'm just a home cook that does his best. Yep, we're just gonna cook this. It's actually pretty syrupy already, but we're just gonna reduce this down. And once this is reduced down a little bit, then we will just set it aside. And when we pull the tart out and let the tart cool down, we will apply this glaze, sort of like the apricot glaze, if you remember from my tart au pêche video. So I'm going to let this continue to cook and to reduce down. Definitely watch it because it, like I said, it will burn. And so definitely check it from time to time. But once you feel like it's getting down to, and like I said, it's pretty close already, but once it reduces down to kind of a somewhat thick glaze or something to your liking, go ahead and take it off. I will show you real quick what it looks like before I apply it in the consistency that I like for these types of glazes. Here is the purple plum tart fresh out of the oven. Now, at this phase, you want to let this cool completely to room temperature before you do anything else with it. It's very fragile at the moment. If I left it in too long, actually the dough would have dried out and it would have been fragile in a different way. But right now it's fragile because it's hot. Things will still shift around liquidy. As this cools down, it'll solidify and it'll become easier to work with and remove from the tart pan and all that good stuff. So don't be tempted to rush this. Just let this sit here and do its thing for a while. And when it gets to room temperature, then we'll go to the next step. The finishing touch is going to be to add our plum glaze here. You can sort of see the consistency here. It's much thicker than it was, almost to the point of being like a jelly or a jam, but not quite. And this has also cooled down considerably as well. So we're going to go ahead and I'm actually just going to brush this on rather than pour it on, just to make sure I get an even distribution everywhere. Or get a little bit of it on all of the plums, which will give everything that nice purple sheen. Be careful at this step too, because you don't want to spread this glaze over your pastry and ruin sort of, you got to care about presentation a little bit. So. And this is mostly cool. It's not 100% cool down to room temperature, but it's really close. That's why I elected to do this now. And then I'm going to let this continue to cool for a little bit to just sort of finish cooling off. And then I will unmold it from the tart pan and I will show you guys the final result. But overall, I'm really happy with the result on this. And I think if you make this, whoever you're making it for, even if it's just for yourself, will be super glad that you did, because I think this is a really good old school Southern dessert recipe here. Almost done. All right, and here is our tart, and I will see you at the finale. And here is our unmolded purple plum tart, and this came out pretty good, I think. You can see it has a much thicker tart crust than a European style tart, but it all came out in one piece, no cracks, no leaks, and I'm going to take this and share it with some people today, and it's going to be really good. So if you enjoy my videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you at the next one.